in the spring. You guys saw Jake's no longer here, so we really got two guys that both had great springs. Jaden and Parker. Jaden kicked off for us last year. You guys have seen Parker's got experience other places. We're excited about the fall. A lot of talent. Now it's time to figure out what happens down the line here.
What are the biggest things you're looking for in terms of determining who that kicker will be this year?
It's a consistency thing. You really want to have a guy. You want to have a guy that you know what you're going to get. That's really what it comes down to. He's got to make kicks. Got to be dependable. So.
Is there any preference toward having one guy handling field goals and kickoffs, or is it just whoever's better in each area?
I think it depends on the guys. Some people really want to do both. Some people want to do one. I think there's an ability for guys earning kicks on both. You can earn some kickoffs, earn some field goals based on kind of how you're practicing. We kick off a lot here traditionally. We score a lot of points. You kick off a lot. So a lot of times down the stretch you don't want your leg to have too many kicks, and then sometimes there's that balance of kicking off helps you. So it kind of depends on the guys and who's better at what. Yeah.
What did you think of John Fleming?
John had a good.
Yeah, how did that come about?
He had a good spring. We had an interesting dynamic last year with our starting long snapper getting hurt. You never want injuries. You planned for him. Mason stepped in, did a really nice job, and then we went out and wanted to have competition, and so John had great film as a freshman. I know some people that knew him, out of Arizona State, and he wanted to come compete against the best, and he did. And I thought he had a really nice spring, really good spring. So.
Is there competition there still than what you're talking about, or is that just trying to think who else would be involved?
Well, Max Monaco, he was the backup in the spring, and he had a really good spring as well. But John's got a lot of starting experience, and I'm excited about that room, that position, and we'll see where it goes. But right now, John had a really nice spring. Max did too, but that was kind of the way it went.
Losing Caleb Brown, where are you at now with the kick return situation?
Yeah, we had a bunch of guys that have done it around here. Mecca obviously 2 years ago was really good. Xavier Johnson into the season for us last year, had a really nice little stretch there. We've got a bunch of names of guys that can do it. We feel really good about it. There's always that balance of how do you make sure you have the right guy to do all your different jobs. You probably don't even. You go back to the beginning of 21. Travion was back there to start. And then he started getting a bunch more carries, and our running back room has a bunch of different players. And so we'll see, kind of how the fall, the summer and the fall develop. But we feel good about our depth. The question is who's going to be that guy, and I'm not quite sure where yet.
How do you feel about just the de-emphasization of the return game, with the specialization in the punting, the 25-yard fair catch? How do you feel about all of that?
I feel like player safety is really important, and that's, as you can see, that's one of the reasons that they're doing this. I think the NFL just changed the rule to do kind of similar to what we do. There's some weird nuances to the way the rule's written that actually it kind of gets screwy, where if no one knows it's going to happen, so there's still a lot of contact before. Some teams choose the fair catch based on hang time and direction, and so you really can't prepare. You still got to run down and go be ready to tackle. So there's a little bit of it, I think, that if they really wanted to say, hey, give people the choice, there are a lot of nuances to it. I think it should be an advantage for us. The fair catch kind of, lets people off the hook, lets us off the hook sometimes in spots where, certain teams might have onside kicks, and then you can say, hey, we just want to fair catch it on the back end if they kick it deep and not have to, have a return, so our guys can really be focused in on the ball. It creates a weird wrinkle that you got to adjust and adapt and play within the rules. But I think we've had an advantage around here a long time with the old rules, and but player safety is really critical.
At punt returner, is Emeka your best option? And who are some other guys that are in the mix there?
Emeka was our guy last year. Obviously Jackson was the guy, and then Emeka, kind of stepped in, and that was a big role for him because he had to play a lot of slot receiver as well. You see his success there. There's some other guys. Caleb was practicing back there. Jaden Ballard was back there in the spring. We've had Carnell Tate catching punts. Obviously there's a lot of internet went crazy with when Marvin was catching punts during spring practice. But the truth is, getting the ball back is number one, and then deciding what happens next is kind of game flow situation. So we want to have a bunch of guys ready to do that. It's not an easy job, but if you practice it enough, you can get good at it, especially with those ball skills that those guys have. So I feel similar to the kick return situation and the punt return. Different guys, but we have good depth. It just depends on who does it. Yeah, you're good.
When you get a guy,
Yeah,
like
thanks.
Evans,
Yeah.
do you see him as an option for those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean,
defensive back, but he's obviously played receiver.
it's something you got to practice a lot of ball security. We've tried different guys. Obviously, we tried a guy, Chip, that was playing defense last year as a kick returner. There's certain things at punt return that you just want to see him do it a lot. I know he played receiver at Notre Dame, and we recruited him as both here at one point, and so he's got speed, and so there's always a threat there that you'd like to be able to take advantage of, and we'll see how it plays out. Yeah.
What's the balance that you look for when you have receivers who are going to have the ball in their hands a lot, take a lot of hits, and then considering them as a return guy? Is there an accumulation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, how do you balance that with the offensive staff?
You want the best guy to win games. That's the hardest part is what do you need to win games? Around here, sometimes, you need a guy to fair catch the ball, offense is really moving it, and you feel good about winning the game. Yep. Sometimes you think we need a spark, and that's where your perfect balance is. You have that guy that can give you both. You trust him 100% to make the right decision based on game flow. We can have calls that say, hey, kill it, don't just fair catch the ball. But you also like that guy that's hungry to go steal a few yards. Because you look at an average. What's a good punt return average? Well, it depends. How many returns did you have? If you're returning everything, your average is going to go down because you're going to get hit sometimes and have a 2-yard return. Or you see sometimes those guys lose a couple. You don't want that, but if you fair catch everything and have one 10-yard return, it looks really good. There was only one play. Can we steal yards for our offense and then pop one? That's where some guys that's their opportunity to have the ball in their hands. They're hungrier to make plays. So now you have to have that balance. Are they going to be reckless? Or are they going to be dynamic? Versus the guy that's catching the ball on first, second down, targeted on third down, well, he might not be as aggressive because that's not his only chance to catch the ball, but we ultimately just want whatever's best to win football games. That's kind of our job here.
Is punting so good now that there are some guys you can't return against, basically?
Punting and schematically, the NFL rules are different than ours. You're allowed to have multiple formations and different alignments, and guys are allowed to release before the ball is punted. In the NFL, you're not allowed to release until the ball's only the 2 edge players, 2 gunners. Everybody else has to stay at the line of scrimmage until the ball's. That's why they protect and they kind of retreat. So the coverage units are not down as far. What happens is there becomes this big gap. There's a wave. Your gunners are down there. Maybe you can double team one, and you have one guy to make miss, and then there's a gap. But if you can get a little crease, something happens. In college, a lot of times it kind of becomes a wave because everybody is going to just run as soon as they recognize that you're not trying to block the punt. So you try and balance with bringing the proper amount of pressure to hold them in a little bit. But then you bring all out pressure, and now you got hitting the kicker and fakes and all kinds. So there's a balance there. But good punters, good scheme, it does make it pretty hard.
I know you guys have gone almost the entire season without even giving up a return because you've had such good punters.
Yep.
Is it just the Australians? What is it?
Well, I mean, you go back. I mean, we did. I can't remember the exact stats, but we were a one-gunner American punter team with Ben Buchanan back in 2012, and Devin Smith was a gun. He was doing that too. You know what I mean? So he was one gunner, but he was a big-time player too. So that helps. You got to have great gunner play. You got to have great snapper putting the ball in the operation and then hang time and placement. Yeah, I mean, it's hard when you're going against really solid special teams opponents. And we have good punters in the Big Ten. We really do. And so it's hard to balance. Is it the punter all the time? Australians are really good at it. I mean, Jesse's really good at. He's got a rollout. He's also got a pocket spiral with good hang time, but placing the ball away from the returner, reading is it a rush, holding it, getting it out fast. So it does create a lot of issues, and that's kind of the way the game's evolved, I think, is when you can fair catch on kickoff return, you could say, hey guys, we're not going to practice returns this week. Okay, or we're going to expect fair catch, maybe not us, but other teams expect a fair catch against or a touchback. We're not going to practice kickoff as much this week. So where's our time going to go? Coverage unit, punt. Okay, that's more important than, and so you kind of there's an extra time factor there too.
Coverage is getting better as punters
punt.
are getting better.
That's right. And I think that anytime you have specialization, that as it evolves, as it goes, it helps. The more down the line you get with these Aussies that are coming in, and they're older guys, and they're Pro Kick does a really nice job. So that's kind of the trend, I think. So
at a place like this that has great receiver talent and great corner talent, what is the competition at gunner like, and how much here? I mean, you mentioned Devin Smith.
Yeah.
We have seen great All-American level players
Oh,
come
absolutely.
through as gunners at this program. What is the standard to be a gunner here?
It's a selfless guy. I mean, that's kind of it would embody, some of the toughest and fastest, smartest guys on your team. Devin Smith. You go back, obviously, everybody, Paris and Terry and Jeff Okuda and those guys. And we've had a bunch of guys around here. You go back to the history of the past. I mean, not ancient history, but since I've been here at least. And it's really my job. It's the staff's job. It's the team's job to understand how valuable that role is and to push that as critically important. And I got to love them up and praise them and get excited about when they make play. And the funny thing is, what's the best play a gunner can make? Force a fair catch, and then the guy catches it and nothing happens. That's a great play. Now the highlights happen when you're, the guy's getting okay. Maybe the kick was a little further, or he's getting a little wild, and you're going to go, try and knock the ball off of him, or get him down, or stop the vertical return, as we say around here. And you just got. I mean, we hype that up a lot in team meetings. We hype that all up in special teams meetings. It's just one of those things that, you don't get a stat for unless you make a tackle, but that's critical. And we have to have, great play out there. And so there's a balance of, sometimes Chris Olave is going to be in on third down. You're looking at him, and you got a backup gunner looking at him, and we're saying, are you good? You want the first down to happen. It doesn't. Okay, did he run a go ball? Is he okay? And he'll look over, he'll give me a thumbs up and run back in. And, so there's always that. You want the best player for that moment. And that moment changes based on game situation, season situation, depth at a certain position health-wise, how tired is he in the month. It all changes, and that's why we try and keep as many guys ready as we can.
There are times when you are like on third down, or maybe double-checking with an All-American level receiver to see if it comes to a punt.
Times. All the time. All the time.
That's almost like a third down double-check ritual. We got to get ready.
Yeah, we'll have a guy standing right next to me, and it's like one of these deals where, okay, hey, you and Chris, and that was Chris, for example. You go back a couple years ago, and it's if Terry had the same thing, right? Now, Terry would always wave me off, and Chris did too. They're like, no, I'm good. Yeah. But it's one of those. Maybe he does run a go ball,
right?
And obviously, if we get the first down, we're not doing anything. Sometimes there's situations where he catches the ball, he gets tackled, and I'm over here calling a punt, looking at it, and I say, okay, are we, and we'll have a staff member or somebody assigned to make sure that transition happens. But, oh yeah. Or if we're going to go for a pooch scenario and you got a different guy going in there because we might get 8 yards and we go from a normal punt to a pooch scenario and you have a different gunner and one's a receiver that's on the field that doesn't know if it's pooch or not. And there's a lot going on there where it could be a corner if it's normal punt, and then maybe Chris and then the other receiver, Jackson or somebody was the other guy that it would have been on a pooch scenario. And now I got to signal and we got to
What is, when you get these young guys in here, right, you're bringing in this young, fast talent, do you have a team meeting and say, anybody who wants to be a gunner, come meet me in the special teams room? Do you have lengthy discussions with the corners coaches and the receivers coaches to figure it out? How much is volunteer? How much are you picked? How do you find initially those gunners?
It's a little bit of everything. Some of it is I'll make videos and show guys that we've been talking about right here and their value and their draft rankings, and I'll pull articles that say, hey, his value was X because of special teams, and he maybe won, he got drafted a position, things like that. And I'll pull clips of the 3 guys. There's guys all over the place that have been successful here. Then it is our coaches. They have to hype it up. They have to push that envelope, and then, I get them together and say, this is the job. This is what you're going to be asked to do. Why is this so critically important? Well, this is what it takes to win what we want to win. If that matters to you, then let's go do this at a high level. If it doesn't, that's fine. You'll tell me verbally, or you'll tell me with how you practice and play. But one way or the other, we have to have a guy that can do this job at that level if we want to go where we expect to and where we all say we want to go.
Yeah.
So are we about it, or are we going to just and they know the importance of it. We spend a lot of time, I do, with the battle of field position. Coach Day does a great job of emphasizing, how critical those yards and how critical those, those moments are. And it all comes down to, it's an important scenario to win football games. That's everybody's job here,
Will you have a meeting in August with the gunner candidates? You've had one in the spring, or like what?
We have them in spring. Well, yeah. I mean, there's no specific gunner candidate meeting. I meet with those guys kind of on. We have our own little time, but there's no like, all right, if anybody that wants to be a gunner, show up. It's not really. Maybe that's a pretty good idea, but no, I've never done it like that. the way I describe it to the guys is
And when you say the guys, who are the guys?
the players, everybody on the team.
Everybody in the
everybody
team.
on the
You're
team.
talking to the whole team.
The whole
Okay.
team.
Got it.
I'll explain it and I'll say, when your name is on a depth chart in a position, 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe sometimes, when your name is up on that depth chart, posted in the locker room, when we have the meetings and everybody, when we go out and practice, your name's just not on a depth chart because we're making an agreement here that these are the standards that we need as a team,
Yeah.
and you're going to do that. If you don't want to, let's have a conversation. And that could mean, hey, you're off. Good. You go do something else. Or maybe that means you're not going to play as much on offense or defense because now it's a different conversation. Because we agreed. Your name's on that depth to be any position.
Yep.
But at each position has a different job. The same thing is true if you're going to be the left guard on punt.
Yep.
We're agreeing to something here. When your name's on that list right there. You said you're going to do this at this level, and it's not some vague, no, this is the job, this is the expectation. And then, give them ownership. If you don't like the way we're doing it, let's have a conversation, right? Now, typically those conversations end up pretty one-sided because of the history of how it's been done and why. But no, hey man, we're all in this thing together. It all comes out in different ways, but that's what we're here for.
How motivating do you think it is for guys, young players especially, who maybe aren't going to be first team offense or defense right this very second, but they have an opportunity to see their name at the top, to earn a spot as a gunner, as a punt protector, as a guy on the end of the line?
I think
is that motivating for them?
It is. It's for some.
Okay.
For some. It's an opportunity to go play in the shoe.
Yep.
It's an opportunity to go make big plays. It's an opportunity for your teammates. There's a lot of reasons people are motivated, a lot of reasons, and they're different for everybody, and that's kind of our job, right? To inspire and motivate these guys to go get jobs done for the team, whatever that is, whether it's throw a touchdown pass, block somebody, make a sack, guard somebody, or go down a punt inside the 5-yard line, or maybe it's, go punt the ball and maybe get a ball off in a crazy scenario where you make them right, and okay, we're going to go win this game because of how you make plays. And so it's my job, it's the staff's job, it's the team's, it's the leader's job to hype up and understand how critical those young guys are, because they were there at one point.
Yep.
And I will have meetings with certain leaders and say, listen, you know what it's going to take. I need your help making sure that these guys understand the importance, and then they are appreciated when they do that job at a high level, because somebody's got to do it. Somebody. I don't really always know who that's going to be right now.
Yep.
All the little detailed job. I mean, we have a depth chart up on every unit. That'll change by the time we play the first game. But I'll go to older guys and say, hey, if these guys aren't ready, we got to get someone ready, or you're going to do it.
Right.
You know the job. And so then that's also a motivating factor for like the young guys to take some of the steam off the older guys, because they're going to have to play a lot on offense and defense. Because we know we got to have no matter what, someone's got to go do the job at a really high level.
What is there? Is it speed and want to? Like what are the physical attributes when you're looking for? I think this guy could be a great gunner. How much is the physical and how much is the mental? Like the will to want to do it.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of speed and strength. If you're just flat out faster than people, just run around them and go. Now, sometimes there's some jammers that can run, and now you got to have the physicality. Sometimes there's an art to it that you can out. I mean, number one is you got to be able to play harder than them, and it's a weird thing to think about when it's a long run. It's 40 yards. And you run for, like, that's what you do. You're really good at running. So sometimes the playing harder is really in a 6 to 8 foot box at the end of the play, where he's going to either get a hand on your chest and wash you by, or you're going to, we have a lot of terms we use. You're going to long arm, you're going to pry and stack, and you're going to end up in front of that returner instead of getting moved past it.
Yep.
So you got to run 40 yards. That's just prerequisite. And now the real grind, the real effort is in the last little bit. 1-2 is a big part of it. You've got to be willing to, like, at a full speed, flat out dive at somebody.
Yep.
And sometimes you hit them, sometimes you miss. It's okay. As long as you're, in the proper position with the proper leverage. It's a speed, toughness. I mean, there's toughness, and then there's an awareness. You want guys that are understanding what's going on. I get a corner that's going to play it a certain way. I get a guy that's dropping from the inside to double team me. I got a returner that's got some savviness to him, and he throws up a fair catch, and you're too close, and he bumps you. You know what I mean? And or is he really, dummying me, and the ball is really going some other place? So there's a lot of those awareness, savviness, where you're running flat out as fast as you can, and you got to figure things out too. It's not an easy thing to do, but that's why you see the guys that have done it at a high level here. Look at who they are.
Is there like a gunner highlight film?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And it's filled with like Ohio State.
Absolutely,
superstars.
absolutely. And there's plays of guys doing it in the NFL too. Like I'll pull them doing it again in the league. I'll pull up all kind of, like Kendall Sheffield's got plays of him running down as a gunner making plays. Jeff has a jammer and a gunner, and you know what I mean? And then, yes, it's littered with guys doing it at this level and then at the next level. Yeah.
Your kicking competition.
Yes.
Is it we kicked this many times in practice and this guy made more and that guy's our kicker? Or like what?
It's more to it.
What I would imagine
Yeah,
it is.
I mean,
more
it's
than that.
there's
how do you run a kicking competition?
It's very nuanced, but also the data tells you a lot.
Yeah.
The data tells you to make kicks, miss kicks, right? There's a lot that goes into it. It's not the same as selecting a quarterback, because quarterbacks have so much. But there is some, because there's a stat to it. Selecting an offensive lineman versus another guy, sometimes it's not statistically driven. Same thing with a receiver sometimes. What if they didn't throw him the ball?
Right.
I don't know how many catches he had. It was not his choice. So there is some statistical to it. There's also some, the way the ball comes off his foot. You see it, and you have to take into account. We have a chart. We have this crazy chart that's got, the wind direction, the wind speeds, the hold, the laces, who was the snapper, all those things. They factor in. But at the end of the day, it's the guy that's going to make the kick.
Is it